Congress? Isn't that the representatives? Do you have a king? Is the United States, do you have a king or do you have a Congress? Who are your representatives? They are responsible. Bring it into the Congress. You need to change this policy. It is so important. Thank you.
So our fourth panelist is Norman Solomon. What role does the media play in the disappearing of our civil liberties? And I'd like you just to touch upon the petition for Bradley Manning for the Nobel Prize as part of it.
Yeah. I was having a conversation a little bit earlier today with someone who was pointing out that we live in a blend of 1984 and Brave New World. And if you read the introduction that Aldous Huxley wrote to the later edition of Brave New World, he said that lies are powerful, but even more powerful is silence about truth. And our mass media, with some blessed exceptions, engages in that deception of silence. And we have seen the vilification already move into high gear towards Edward Snowden in the last few days, just as we have seen it in the last years against Bradley Manning. This is a reflex of stenography for the state rather than authentic journalism. This is a default position of the dominant aspects of the means of mass communication in this country. And that is the bad news. The good news is that we have very vigorous and strong means of communication that are not tethered to the corporate government state. And we have this opportunity to enliven and strengthen those means of communication and to use them to organize effectively. I was thinking about, it's the first time I've heard about this story in the courtroom on Fort Meade grounds where Bradley Manning is on trial. And it made me think about how so much is implicit. And part of our challenge is to make what is implicit explicit, to flush it out, to push against those walls, to expose what is between the lines, functioning with a hammer every day, but usually the velvet surrounds it, right? It's all nice, the pat on the head, like President Obama's speech, what was that, a week or 10 days ago. Oh, this is an important discussion that we need to have. What he left out is while we continue to shred the Bill of Rights, while we continue to assert our prerogative with impunity to send cruise missiles, to send drones, to send the night calls at the homes of people around the world when they are targeted, to assert that impunity, but we don't get around to telling you about it because that is implicit. And the achievement that we're in the midst of, I believe, includes to flush that out and make it explicit. That's the negative. To make that negative that does exist, make it clear. And we have so much reason for gratitude to Bradley Manning, to Edward Snowden, to Thomas Drake, to so many others who have been courageous whistleblowers and have been and are being prosecuted by the Obama administration. Okay, let's flip that over. There's also the implicit positive. The implicit positive that people can exercise democratic prerogatives, we can organize, and it's implicit. It's implicit, and it's too damn implicit in our country, because we skitter along it and then we are pulled for understandable reasons because of personal needs and our personal lives and situations. But the vacuum tube of mass media and the political power structure and that madness of militarism pulls us to keep skittering along the implicit without making explicit that each in our own ways, just like Bradley Manning, just like Edward Snowden, we face these choices. And we are being encouraged time and again through the institutional messaging, the cultural messaging, to not make the choices that on our deathbeds would make us most proud. I think of the end of the novel The Trial, and I'll apologize to Kafka if I'm remembering it wrong, but this is what, after several decades of ago reading it, I'm left with. You may remember at the end, he's sitting, waiting for the time to walk through the door. The door is ajar. He's not walking through the door. He's waiting and waiting and waiting until he becomes too weak to have the option, physically too weak to have the option to walk through the door. And at that point, the sentry, the guard next to the door, said, "This door was meant only for you, and now I'm going to close it." We don't want to be in that situation. We don't want to only honor those who have walked through their door in their situation with their opportunity. We don't want to only honor them. We want to support them as part of building a movement strong enough to counter the militarism and the madness of corporate greed that is so filtered into the power structures of our country and the world, alas, at this point. And that's where the information flow, the analysis, the passion, the polemics are also important, and the capacity to mobilize our strength and our power. And it's understandable that living in this country, we would maybe be ambivalent about power. Power has been used to such horrific ends so often. But, pardon the cliche, but it's very real. There is an honorable tradition and capacity that has been called power to the people, right? And that is our hope. And so what is happening now with Bradley Manning and with Edward Snowden, I think, is in so many ways an opportunity, and that includes organizing. And I'd like to say a little bit about the capacity to galvanize support for those two individuals at this time. A couple of years ago, Jeff Cohen, who founded the Media Watch Group FAIR, and I co-founded rootsaction.org out of the belief that we had a lot of information flow, but we had an atrophied, undeveloped action arm for progressives in this country, particularly when it comes to the military-industrial state. And so at this point, I can tell you that not only is Roots Action growing and growing very fast, but in the last day and a half, Roots Action's sponsorship of a petition headlined "Thank You, Edward Snowden" has gathered more than 30,000 signers. And that petition includes thousands upon thousands of individual comments, and you can see them all when you go, if you haven't already, to sign that petition at rootsaction.org. And we're going to get this petition in the hands of Edward Snowden, but we need your help. Not only that every one of the 500 or so people in this room will go to rootsaction.org and sign this petition, but just think about it, if everybody here sends that petition link, which is either rootsaction.org or supportedwardsnowden.org, either way will get you to the same place. If you get 10 or 15 or 20 people you know to sign it, you're going to up that amount tremendously, and they could do the same in turn. Think of it as a resistance chain letter, as we used to call it. I also want to mention that on the same webpage, homepage of rootsaction.org, we have a petition, Bradley Manning's Nobel Peace Prize. We now have 70,000 signers. And that petition will be delivered a little bit later this summer to the Norwegian Nobel Committee in Oslo. We need your help to make it a bigger petition. On your seats, and if you're listening on the radio, just go to the website, rootsaction.org, or support edwardsnowden.org. But on your seats here in the room, it's one of the half sheets you got, says Roots Action at the top, and it has information, again, that you can share with others about both of these petitions. Now, it is not just a petition, because everybody who signs that becomes part of our action arm of resistance to the warfare state. Through that process today, Roots Action has more than 300,000 people as our action arm in this country. And we're just getting started. Now, I'm not talking about the people who came and went, who signed a petition but then got an email and they thought, oh no, you're supporting Bradley Manning, and then they unsubscribed, and believe me, some people did. I'm not talking about the people who signed some petition and then got another email from us after they signed, and they said, oh no, you're being critical of President Obama, and they unsubscribed, and they did. I'm telling you that more than 300,000 people have come to rootsaction.org and have stayed. And we expect by next year we're going to have more than 500,000. We are already the largest online force in support of Bradley Manning and Edward Snowden in this country. And I'm asking you to make our strength even greater.
So now we're going to take some questions from all you folks, because you're part of this panel. So we have somebody out there with a microphone. There's a lot to take away from this tonight that you can take home with you.
Testing. I have two questions for you, the panelists, and wish you would answer it in brief. First of all, I believe
one
that...
question, sorry, just one.
Okay. Yes, many people who supported Obama both times for President of the United States said that he would be better than the Republican in what I consider a good cop, bad cop U.S. presidential system anyway, and said that Obama would give us more room to dissent, something I never believed. I wonder what any of you panelists who'd like to answer that question would say now.
Good question.
I would start, I think we walk through the algorithm of where we are at a time. And when there are primary races, you fight for who you think would be best. And then when it comes down to a narrower choice, you fight for perhaps who would be the least bad. I think that progressives have two, you might say, overarching responsibilities. One is to fight the right wing, the racists, the nativists, the bigots, the misogynists, and the other is to fight for progressive programs. And we can't forget either one of those responsibilities. And as bad as Obama is, I think it is reality that just as bad as Nancy Pelosi is, that Boehner, who called Snowden a traitor today, is even worse. As much as we might have been unhappy with, and I was, with Kagan or Sotomayor put on the Supreme Court by this current president, I've been even more unhappy with Alito and Roberts. So I think that's partly my answer.
I have an invitation for all four panelists and everyone in this room. On Wednesday, June 19th, I and other code pinkers will meet at 11:30 at the Willie Mays statue and do a bannering, flyering, and conversation action for an hour before the Giants-Padres game. This is a way to be in contact with thousands of our fellow and sister citizens at a time in a place they don't expect, and that's very lively, and we've had great results. So can any or all of you great panelists join us, please? And for everybody else here, and talk to me afterwards, thanks.
What time is that again?
11:30 a.m.
11:30 a.m. Willie Mays building on the 19th, right? Statue.
Let's have a question.
I know a lot about that.
Let's have a question. Right back, the gentleman with, right? Yes. Question.
Thank you. I'm Larry Everest. I write for Revolution newspaper. I'm a supporter of Bob Jaffe new synthesis of communism. And I have a question for any of the panelists and also the moderator.
Sure.
Everything we've heard tonight screams, let's unite, let's stand together across ideological and political lines to oppose repression. We need much greater awareness and resistance. And the lawsuit filed against the NDAA and the temporary stay is very important, but there's a problem. Chris Hedges and the legal team have very unfortunately insinuated language in the brief that's a dangerous and erroneous mischaracterization of the revolutionary communist. If I could please finish.
Just your question. Go ahead.
No, please, you're shutting, please, let me, people don't, I'm going to, and the question is, no.
That's all right.
Excuse me, we're supposed to have unity here. Most of you don't even know what is going on, and I'm being shouted down, and I don't want to take time. I want to finish what I'm saying.
Go ahead.
There's a dangerous mischaracterization of Bob Jaffe of the Revolutionary Communist Party that has the potential to criminalize protected speech, that has a potential to cast Jaffe and the RCP, sweep them into the category of terrorism, which is wrong, and most importantly, it has the potential to greatly weaken the unity and the resistance that is needed against everything that is being described here. I've handed a lot of people a statement. I would encourage you to read it and support it, but I would particularly like to get the statement from Mr. Jaffe in regards to what I've raised, and I'm sure he's familiar with it.
Okay, great. Unless you have a question, just pass. Once you have a question, we will give you the mic. Time is short. Make sure when you take the mic. Okay, we're done. Go ahead, sir.
James Clapper made a statement in his fact sheet that, and he set aside constitutional issues. He said, yes, okay, we are seizing all the data, but we don't actually look at it. We go through the FISA court to make any particularized access to all of this data. What are your thoughts on that assertion?
Is that to any of the panelists? Yeah. Okay. So the question was, Clapper made a statement that we seize all this data, sure, but we're not looking at it. So I heard a great analogy on a phone call I was on with a national coalition last week about this. That basically the way that the government is painting it is that, you know, finding terrorist activity or terrorist communications is like looking for a needle in a haystack. So we're just going to bring in the whole haystack. And sure, it might be true that they're not. It's unclear what the actual processes are for them supposedly accessing that information, and I would also second what Mr. Ellsberg said, that it's doubtful that they're not looking at it, and there's no reason we should believe anything that he's saying at this point. But I would say that also keep in mind that once they have that data, they have it forever. And we've seen the laws change so rapidly in the last couple of years that I don't think it matters if they're looking at it right now. They will be able to look at it. And I just wanted to, I know this isn't an answer to your question, but I just also wanted to remind everybody that the the congressional recess is coming up in August. So we've talked a lot about things you can do today, and I would encourage everybody to make direct visits to their representatives while they are in town. So just remember that, coming up in August.
I have a question with the two attorneys on the panel, and that is there anything that we can legally do to all these public officials who are sworn to uphold and defend the Constitution, who are not doing it, and who instead are trashing the Constitution? Is there any way we can get them for treason, put them on trial, get them impeached? And that includes the president.
I'd like to just answer that very briefly. We see a broken Congress. We see broken laws coming out of Congress. We see an incredible lack of oversight, neglect by Congress. We see the court jurisdiction shrinking. So we're going to have more and more people like Brad Manning and Snowden come up from our ranks. So what can we do? We can volunteer We can form, we can be in solidarity with